In this section, we're going to study linear inequalities. So inequalities, you probably have some familiarity with. They're things where we're going to be using that greater than, less than, greater than equal to, less than or equal to. So we're going to do a little bit of review of that, and then we're going to use them in a really specific business application and talk about a break-even point. But before we get to those applications, we're going to look at kind of a review of inequalities, and we might bring in a new topic for some. It's totally okay, which is this interval notation. So this interval notation probably is going to be new to a lot of people. So we'll practice that before we get to the word problems and the applications. So interval notation is a way that we write out the answer. A lot of times we call it maybe the domain of our graph. So we're used to graphing on a number line. So instead of having a visual, we can represent that with symbols, and that's this interval notation here. So one of the big things is to know the difference between when to use a parenthesis and when to use a bracket. So we can see here, I've got some with parentheses and then I've got some with brackets. If you used open circles and closed circles back when you were learning these, in middle school and high school, then you can think about them in terms of that. A parenthesis would have been where you would have had an open circle in your answer. And a bracket would be where you would have normally had a closed circle in your answer. And we can mix these up. We can have open and closed together. So here we would have had two open circles. Here we would have closed and then an open, then a closed, and two closed circles. So instead of open and closed now, we're going to be using these brackets and parentheses. We're going to practice writing them out right down below here in some of these examples. So for this first one, X, this symbol is less than or equal to. Just a quick reminder, the ones with the little bar underneath, that's half of an equal sign. Equal sign is 2 bars. And we're just going to take half of it and we're going to put the inequality on top of that. Little alligator mouth, some people call them, or Pac-Man. So less than or equal to 7. So I'm going to draw a little number line here. And I want all the numbers less than 7. So that might be numbers like 6 and 5. And since it has the equal to, a lot of times we would draw that as a closed circle. And less than, some people remember, is to the left. Now I'm just going to use it as a bracket. So those closed circles are going to become brackets now in interval notation. So to write this in interval notation, we read left to right, just like we read words in a sentence. We're going to start left to right. So on the left here, on the leftmost here, I guess I want to circle all this, it's going to be an arrow. So on the left-hand side, I'm going to call that negative infinity. Arrows are going to be our infinities. On the left, they're negative, and on the right, they're positive. But arrows are our infinities. And that's going to go all the way over to 7. It's closed, so I'm going to have a bracket there. I'm going to skip B for a second. I'm going to look over here. Actually, you know what? I will do B. I'm going to draw my graph again. This is greater than. So the numbers that are greater than 12 are like 13. It does not have an equal to, so normally I would think about putting an open circle. Now I'm just going to call that a parenthesis. We read left to right. So the first thing we come to when we're reading our picture up here is this little part up here. So that's a parenthesis at 12. Then we come over and we've got these arrows. It's on the right hand side, so that's going to be infinity. So there's my interval notation. And now I'll do C. Again, I'm going to draw my picture. We're going to put lots of numbers on here. Squeeze them all on there. At -3, I would be an open circle. All the way to 5, and I would be a closed circle. And so then instead of thinking about those circles, I'm going to use the new parentheses and brackets. Again, I'm going to read left to right. My picture starts with that parentheses at -3 and ends with a bracket at 5.